Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Studio Ghibli month here on Reaction and Review. Tonight, guys, I'm checking out a film from 2010. That movie is The Secret World of Arrietty. Yes, I don't know much about this movie, guys. I do know that it's based on a novel, a very well-known book, which was called The Borrowers. I do know that The Borrowers had another movie made based on it, and that movie looked kind of shit. But really, that, guys, is as far as my knowledge of this movie goes, is that it's based on a book, and said book was made into a movie one other time. I don't know anything else about it. I have no idea if this thing is going to be any good at all. I'm actually kind of hoping for it to be decent, because unlike every other movie this month, which was sent in by viewers, this one I had to pay for, because I noticed that the month I decided to do this needed 9 movies, and I only had 8 Ghibli films. I needed a 9th, so caved in and bought this. I'm certainly hoping for it to be decent. The only way I'm going to find out, though, guys, is if I shut up and I push play, and I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out The Secret World of Arrietty. Alright, I will say I do find it kind of cool that, our fucking borrowers are essentially able to take needles and fashion them as swords. That looks, well, at least that's how it kind of looked when she, like, sheathed it by stabbing it through her skirt. It looks sort of cool. Unfortunately, I'm also noticing what could potentially be a little bit of, issue with scale. But, because things honestly seem to grow and shrink depending on the shot. I'm certainly hoping that isn't a common thing, and hopefully I'll be able to look past it. But so far, guys, the movie is alright. So, I've got kind of a dumb question. I know this is sort of a stupid question, but damn it, I kind of feel like asking. So, the borrowers directly state that they don't take things from stuff like dollhouses and all that because humans would notice it too easily. If that's the case, where the hell did they get all of the clothing that they have? Are you telling me that they just know how to make stuff that well with what little scraps they find? I'm just sort of curious, guys. It's a little minor nothing, and it's kind of bugging me just slightly. You know, guys, I am going to say this right now, and this is one thing I will always love about films from Studio Ghibli is the beautiful detail that go into the little things. We finally got a full look at this friggin' dollhouse, and it's probably one of the most beautiful things I have seen on film in a long time. There is so much detail, and it looks so fucking beautiful, man. It must have taken hours of just painting and just working to make that thing look as good as it looked for this movie. That was fucking awesome, man. You know, guys, I really didn't think they were going to actually tell us what was Shaun's mystical medical problem, what his little mystery medical issue was. At least now we know it has to do with his heart, so at least now I kind of know what's going on with him. At least that's sort of a plus. Still, really doesn't make the character it doesn't make the character interesting in the slightest, but at least now I know what's wrong with him. Okay, I got another stupid question. I totally understand it's a stupid question. Why bother asking? But so now Arrietty and Shaun are trying to find Arrietty's mom. He grabs her and puts her up on his shoulder, even though he's got a breast pocket on his shirt that she could easily rest in. No, just put her up here where a sudden movement will just cause her to go flying right the fuck off, you know. That's, again, guys, it's a real minor nothing, but it's one of those little things that I fucking notice, and it just bugs me a little bit. Alright, guys, I'm just gonna say this right now. Our film's villain would probably be incredibly annoying if she wasn't voiced by Carol fucking Burnett, because Carol Burnett is making this character work. As annoying and as kind of shallow as the character is, her performance is absolutely selling it, and I fucking love it, man. Well, Well, guys, that was The Secret World of Arrietty. Let me shut that off. All right. Let's start with writing. When I started this thing, I had no idea what I was really getting into, because the only thing I knew was that it was based on a book called The Borrowers. And I know jack shit about that book. Or at least I did, at least I knew jack shit going into this. I happen to remember seeing the trailers for the U.S. Borrowers movie, and that looked absolutely horrible. But this wasn't too bad. Our story flows incredibly well. Our characters, for the most part, are incredibly likable. The ending is incredibly... The ending, guys, is very, very touching, and I was not really... I wasn't totally expecting that, because... I really don't want to go into spoilers. I can just say that it is going to make you feel. And that's something that a lot of movies nowadays just don't fucking do. So, we do have that much, and that's awesome. I absolutely loved how the characters were written. And, you know, that really is, guys, the whole thing here is you need decent writing. Otherwise, everything else falls to pieces. And I mentioned that when I was talking about the faults in stuff such as Howl's Moving Castle, it was because there really wasn't a whole lot of story there. There was a ton of filler, and the pacing was awful. Or when I reviewed My Neighbor Totoro, where there is no plot to speak of, and, you know, it's just shit happening for the sake of shit happening. This thing, we actually have a very well-crafted story. Our characters, for the most part, are all incredibly interesting characters. The only one I kind of thought was irritating and shit would be our villain. And the reason why is just because she has an almost irrational dislike for the borrowers, or, well, the fucking, like, little, you know, people, as she calls them, where she's been trying to prove that they are real for years. And, you know, that really is the whole drive of... I mean, that is her whole drive, is she wants to find these borrowers and show that they are real. Which would probably work. Unfortunately, though, you're really never given a reason as to why she wants to show that these creatures exist, outside of the fact that she's been accused of forgetting where she put things when it was actually just the borrowers were taking shit. So, you know, and that honestly felt, you know, a little bit shallow and a little bit shit, but that honestly is one friggin' character out of a cast of about 8, maybe 9 characters. So, honestly, I'm not going to complain about that too much. And one of the big reasons why I cannot complain about that, I'm going to jump right into acting, is because of who plays our villain. Our villain is played by legendary comedy actress Carol Burnett. And if you give Carol Burnett a script, there's a 99% chance she is going to blow it out of the fucking water. And my God, she does it here. And she makes this character who seems kind of lifeless and shallow and kind of pointless. My God, she makes it work, and she makes it work incredibly well. Unfortunately, I really can't say much about the rest of our cast. The only other people I knew going into this were Amy Poehler, who I'm not a big fan of in the first place, but I will say that at least she turns in a halfway decent performance, and Will Arnett, who also I'm not a big fan of, but I am willing to admit that he does know how to act. Unfortunately, he doesn't do it here. Because apparently, when he was put into the booth, Will fucking Arnett was told just be real serious and raspy, and so we have his character who spends every scene just sounding like this. Doesn't put any feeling into anything. He doesn't really put any emotion into a single word he says. It's just this nonstop and nothing else. And I probably just did a dead on that one, because it really is just low and raspy. There's low and kind of raspy. There's nothing ultimately special there. I was expecting a lot better from Will fucking Arnett. And our 2 stars, I had no idea who these 2 stars are. And according to the back of the Blu-ray case, their names are Bridget Mendler and David Henry, and they're both from some show on the Disney Channel, or shows. I don't know. I don't watch the fucking Disney Channel. Neither of them were really all that good either. So, really, guys, when it comes to cast, Polar did a fairly decent job. Burnett is the reason to watch this. Everybody else is everywhere from average to kind of shit, so there's not really much here in terms of acting, which shocked me because that is one thing I usually was able to cite as a positive from every one of the movies I've done this month, is that Disney at least knows how to get a really powerful cast to come in and do a great job, and then there's only one, maybe two, who kind of sort of disappoint. This time we have a fucking flip of that, where the only person who actually seemed to give a shit is Carol fucking Burnett, and everybody else just phones it in. So, acting was a huge letdown here. So I can say at least that much. Art style. I once more have to cite that Studio Ghibli has not moved past the horrible affliction of Ghibli face, because everybody still has like any one of the 4 or 5 default faces which the studio uses, and it's starting to get tiresome seeing it again and again over the course of a month. I will say that while the characters look kind of bland in terms of their faces, everything else, and I'm talking the house, I'm talking the borrower's nest, I'm talking the dollhouse, I'm talking the backyard, everything else looks fucking gorgeous. So even though even though the studio essentially has given up on creating characters who look fucking unique and different, at least they care enough to make everything else look awesome. And it is sometimes just breathtaking. Guys, I never thought I'd be able to praise it. I never thought I'd be able to praise the way a dollhouse looks in a fucking movie. But when we are finally given a tour of this handcrafted dollhouse, and you see every little fucking detail, it's amazing to see. The scene itself is maybe only about 60 seconds long, but it is probably the most beautiful 60 seconds in the history of Studio Ghibli. There is that much detail there. There is that much detail. There is that much just absolutely loving everything about it, man. And it's punctuated by some amazing music on top of that. I'm going to segue into music. Not sure if you picked up on that, but probably did. Our music here, once more, as has been the way with every other Ghibli film I've covered this month, the music is amazing. The music here is fucking gorgeous from start to finish. Our sound mix here is good. Our Foley and our Foley mix is really good. I do have to mention one thing. I kind of hinted at it way early on in the movie, and that is the fact that this movie has a bit of a slight issue with scale, and this sort of goes back to animation, and that is the fact that the borrowers seem to change in size from shot to shot, and it gets really noticeable at times. So, for instance, one of the first big plot points is Arrietty and her dad are going to pilfer a sugar cube because they need sugar. And the sugar cube, from shot to shot, when a single character, in this instance Arrietty, is holding onto the sugar cube, it will change in size from like this to this to this to this, from shot to shot. I am not even kidding. And this is made a little bit more bothersome by the fact that the background's in the borrower's nest. I understand. I fucking talked about detail, and I think it is that mountain of detail that actually makes this sort of thing stand out. So I've got here an empty soda can. They actually have the top of one of those cans on one of the walls inside of their nest, and it takes up almost the whole fucking wall. All right, that's sort of weird. My camera's face fucking recognition is actually marking the can as a face. That's interesting. Anyway, so you'll basically see like the top of a soda can, a beer can, whatever, and it takes up a very large portion of a fucking wall, meaning this would be pretty much like the whole head and torso area probably down to about the waist on one of the borrowers. And then on the wall in their kitchen, they have a wristwatch, at least the face of a wristwatch, and it's hanging up there. But it also looks to take up almost this. It looks to be almost as big as this. And even though these are very similar in size, there is still enough of a difference where they shouldn't be that fucking close in size. And that happens everywhere. There are tons of instances where you will see items that seem to grow and shrink constantly. Arrietty, early on, she picks up this pin and she uses it as a sword. It's a really cool thing. And once more, from shot to shot, that pin is everything from, at least on her, it is everything from a short sword to a fucking long sword. All simply because it was a different animator or a different something, and it caused weird scale issues. And I totally understand that nobody else is going to notice that, and that honestly is the kind of nitpicky bullshit that only I personally notice. But I do feel that it is worth mentioning, because for a studio that prides itself on breathtaking and beautiful detail, the fact that they fucked up scale seems a little bit off to me. Now, once more though, that is totally a minor thing, and it honestly is not a deal breaker sort of thing, but it is something that I noticed, and I did feel the urge to have to mention it. So when all is said and done, I'm able to recommend The Secret World of Arrietty. Definitely yes, to rent or to stream it, if anyone's got a streaming service that carries this. By all means, yes. But to purchase it, I really don't think so. Mind you, I am totally happy that I had a chance to watch it. The movie was a lot of fun to watch, but I just don't think I'm going to watch it a second time. I think that's sort of I think that's sort of the thing. I'm totally happy to have watched it once. I do not see myself watching it a second time. So I can at least say rent it, and if you really like what you've seen and you yourself could see yourself watching it 5, 6, 7 more times, then by all means buy it. And if you have kids, my God, this movie is an amazing family film. Kids are going to adore this thing, and adults are going to have a blast with this movie as well. This movie, guys, is great from start to finish. The only real things that bring it down are some questionable voice acting and some rather iffy uses of scale. Beyond that, everything else here is awesome, and that is great. I am so happy that I had a chance to watch this movie. Unfortunately, I'm not real happy with the $14 it cost me to buy it. Would probably have been a lot happier if the movie was a shitload cheaper. Now, I'm going to go and find something else to watch. I think honestly, after something this wholesome and happy and shit, I think I need something a little bit darker just to kind of balance things out. What do I have on my shelf for that? Faces of Death. Perfect. I will go watch Faces of fucking Death again. Still waiting on if they're ever going to put the other 3 Faces of Death documentaries on Blu-ray. That has nothing to do with this. I'm just thinking out loud, so don't mind me. Anyway, guys, with that, we come to the close of another reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.